Well, here we are at the banquet, and this is some of the memorabilia. Let's see. Different shirts. Wow, now there's a library bar one there. A lot of these I don't recognize. Beer City. Oh, I remember this shirt here. Beer City. Oh, Highland Avenue Oasis shirts here.
You taking some video of all this?
Yeah, I think I'd like to get some of this stuff on here so we'll be able to remember it. Oh, here is, Over Mighty Hammer, most valuable guts players. Wow.
Either it's alternate or discount.
The Humblies. A well-known team. The Library Bar. I already have one of those. The Library Bar picture. Here are the boys. Joseph Youngman, I saw him. I have to go say hello, that's for sure. Queen of Frisbee, here's Joe. For Katie, she loves to eat here. Watch this. Yeah.
Well, that's time, and that's
Kevin can chow down like a real man too.
Kevin, look at the camera.
And some of the kid friends here. There's the big kid himself.
The good kid, like
Who would eat in this?
Crow used to be.
Super Shrink Johnson, author of the definitive Frisbee book, California Masters, IFT 11 in 1968. Hugh the Mighty Thor Anderson, captain of the IFT championship. Thor's foul side. Also one of the world's leading experts on how to get cup trucking. Jumbo John Davis, promoter of Frisbee in the 1970s. This is the man that turned Frisbee into an event in the FT Club. Paul Sky King Richardson. He's the mini Minoso of Guts Frisbee. He's played in 5 decades. Member of the Thor's Ball 5, 2-time FT winners. Steve Sewell, Frisbee author. Member of the California Ministers IFT Championship in 1968-69. And last but not least, the world's leading Frisbee minutia historian, Jim Palmieri. We're going to let them go, and then we'll take Q&A when they're done. Oh, Goldie, guys. Goldie Thornton, the golden finger of Frisbee. Goldie played on the first team that played as Highland Avenue Aces in 1970. Yes? Yeah, there's probably something over there by the door. Jose, check it out. First, Mr. Duke.
That's the title of our seminar tonight.
This is one of the Healy brothers.
The title is The Concepts of Reality and Unreality in Relation to the Founding Fathers of the International Frisbee Tournament. It's going to be pretty heavy. It's going to be first. Reality and unreality, especially the latter, are familiar to most of this august audience. Pleased to see you all here. There's also an intermediate stage in which the evidence is inconclusive. So since tomorrow's Father's Day, I thought I would deal with reality and unreality with three of the founding fathers of Frisbee. The first one is Jack Wheel of Toe Jam, Utah. He appears in the early literature. He was the champion of Region 19. He's a number of references there. The second is Julius T. Knoxville. And the third is Steady Ed Hendrick. There are other founding fathers, but I think we could deal with these three. Jack Wheel of Toe Jam, Utah. Of course, there is such a thing as Utah. That's real. Okay. There is such a thing as Toe Jam. You can put your finger on it. And there is such a thing as the Mining Gazette. Daily Mining is 150 years old. And but the Gazette is real, but not everything in the Gazette is real. Except Gilbert. Gilbert is always real. The Jack Wheel is the he's my dad. And he's the father of the four of us there on the Frisbee there. And he is a founding father for a particular reason. He had the ability for 10 years, the first 10 years. You couldn't do anything about it now, even if you were still alive. But those first 10 years, with one look, as a father of six can do, or with two words, like simple words like stop it, he could have stopped it. And he didn't. And we all have to be grateful for that, because he's a founding father. He could have stopped it. And we've often wondered, why didn't he stop it? This is his town. Eagle Harbor was his mother's hometown, my grandmother. He loved Houghton, he loved Eagle Harbor. Neither of them particularly came out well in the International Frisbee Tournament. And so we've been puzzling over this for 40 years or so. And I think that the reason that he didn't stop the International Frisbee Tournament is because he was afraid. He was afraid we'd do something worse. And the track record made his fear rational. Okay, let's go down to the second founding father, Julius T. Knoxville. Real. He lived across the alley from my grandparents on Blanche Street in Houghton. He was a professor at Michigan Tech University here. He was the president of the Houghton City Council. They called him mayor, but he was officially the president for a number of years. And he did, not this one, but he did create the Julius T. Knoxville Trophy in the late 1920s or the early 1930s. It was before Prohibition was ended. And that's important. The reason that the penny is in the trophy is because when the police stopped the bootleggers and shook the contents of their trunk, if it rattled, it couldn't be liquid. And so that's how you had to do it. There had to be a penny in everything, so it would rattle. So there is a Julius T. Knoxville. There was a World War I. There was a Kaiser. The Kaiser lost the war. Julius T. got the emblem. It's coming. Okay, Dave promised. So
That must be the
that's
words we
Julius
were
T.
reading
Knoxville.
on there.
He's
That,
real.
whatever it says right
Then
on
we
the
come to the
Julius.
third founding father, Ed Hendrick. And if there's an air of unreality, it's about Steady Ed Hendrick. He's a, there's a photograph. There's a photograph over there of Steady Ed with his, I think, a tennis hat. floppy hat with an IFT emblem on it. And the year that his factory thugs from Whammo came and stole the trophy, outplayed us. They outplayed us. He felt bad. He was a real gentleman. He felt bad about taking the trophy back to California with him. So he left that hat with my daughter. And she wore the hat, and I wore the hat, and wore to shreds. We finally took the little emblem off, and it's on the enlarged photograph over there. So that's a third-class relic of Ed Hedrick. And so he's real. He's real in that sense. On the other hand, there's an interview that he gave to the Los Angeles Times. I'm going to read you 2 things from it, and you can judge for yourself how real Ed Hedrick is. Steady Ed was asked why the IFA decided to hold its international championships at Eagle Harbor. I guess it was selected because of its awayness from reality, he said. It has a permanent population of about 3. And maybe 100 during its season. As the IFA publicity releases suggest, the Frisbee movement is characterized by an awayness from reality. Frisbeeing, said Steady Ed, is just an escape. Now, he's at this point when he gives this interview, he's been to Eagle Harbor several times. And Eagle Harbor is solid rock and real sticky sand. And here's a guy sitting on the San Andreas Fault, ready to go sky high any minute, and he thinks we're not real. Okay, now is Steady Ed real? Is Steady Ed real? Think about it. Okay. Here's another one, same interview. Here's Ed saying, Julius T. Nakazel was a local character in the Eagle Harbor area, said Steady Ed. He disappeared right at the time of the first Eagle Harbor tournament 11 years ago, just like Judge Crater. Now, we had told, of course, Steady Ed was up here looking for the trophy. He knew it was the Julius T. Nakazel trophy, and he was wondering about Julius T. And we told him over and over again, he's a real guy. Don't embarrass him. And he didn't come to the tournaments. But he said the Nakazel. One story is that he vanished. Now this is Steady Ed talking about Julius T. Nakazel. One story is that he vanished while out looking for a Frisbee, one of the overthrows. So now shortly after this interview, Julius T. Nakazel was in California visiting his family. Do you know this story? He was visiting his family, and Steady Ed came out of church one Sunday morning, and a man there who knew them both, I don't know who it was, said, Ed, I'd like you to meet Julius T. Nakazel. And Ed, to his credit, and to avoid litigation, invited Julius T. to be the main event at the next Frisbee tournament. I think it would be 1970, something like that. And I wasn't here for that, but he lionized Julius T. Julius T. loved it. Jim Bojo has a photograph of Julius T. When he was at that meeting. So you can judge for your reality. Is Jack Wheel more real than Steady Ed? To me, he is. He's got 2 of his daughters-in-law here. Jack Wheel's daughters-in-law, stand up. You got a grandson here? And there are many others. We had 6 children, 30 grandchildren, double that for great-grandchildren, still counting. So Jack Wheel is real, Julius T. Nakazel is real, Steady Ed Hedrick, you wonder.
There was a time that if you had anything that didn't say Whammo on it, you couldn't come to Eagle Harbor. Didn't fly, right, Ely?
You're right.
And there was a time that you couldn't throw overhand. until those California devils. I read Dave's memo and it said you can talk for 5 to 8 minutes. I multiplied it by the number of speakers and I said, you're crazy. These people are going to be sleeping. I mean, they've been drinking all day, they've been frisbeeing all day, what the hell are you doing to them? So I wrote down a few. Boy, frisbee hasn't changed. When I was a director, that's what we did. That's John Davis. He used to be pissed at me all the time. Okay. I just dropped down a few things, and the first thing I said was, what do you want to hear from a 70-year-old fart? But anyway, I ran the tournament in 68, 69. I worked with Jake, the Healy's, Rich Warden, the whole crew before that. And I played Frisbee a few years after, and then I went to Calumet, and I couldn't get interested in it there. So I just dropped out. So I haven't seen Goldie, who I used to call about once a week at least. I haven't seen Steady Ed. John I see because he's got a place in Eagle Harbor. But in Boots and Jake, Gretchen, Mary, you too, John. Anyway, I see them all often. So I just jotted down a few things about the 68, 69 tournament, and I'm sure that there'll be 5 people in here at least that'll say you're wrong. I was tournament director, you can't argue that. I have to thank Ray Smith, the president of Michigan Tech, because at the time I was coordinator of courses and in public relations, and I talked to Ray about Frisbee, and Ray said, go for it. So I had a lot of time on your dollars to make phone calls to Goldie and other people, and they let me go with Frisbee, and I promoted it. And I think we did a pretty good job because in 69 we had over 4,000 people there. But you don't want to hear us blow our horn here. Let me just write down. I think that in 68 and 69, Harvey J. and Mr. Nakazel came to the forefront really with the articles and the Wall Street Journal, and I used to get calls from everybody. It was crazy. I'll give you one quick example. The Wakeman kids burned down the George Gipp Memorial Tournament, probably with some of my kids and maybe Healy. But anyway, they burned them down, burned the whole place down. So I went over one day and picked up some of it was a shingle building. I have pictures of it if anybody wants to see it. But anyway, it was a shingle building, so I took some and I put them in my shop. And for the next 10 years, people would come in, like you folks, would come in and say, do you have anything left from the George Gipp Memorial Pagoda? And so I'd give them a shingle. Well, after a little while, I ran out. I was telling Stencil, who came up like one of these yo-yos to get one, you know. I went up to the Eagle Harbor, now it's called a solid waste refuge, but at those times it was a dump. And I picked up a few shingles. And some of you who think you have you ain't got it. Stencil's lucky, he's got the real thing, but some of you have Eagle Harbor dump bear pit stuff. I've got to say that Steady Ed, Goldie, and Whammo were really behind me all the way. Almost anything I asked for, whatever I wanted, they came through. Some of the stuff I didn't want, but they got it. And they might have been a little selfish too, because they got some pretty good publicity. Some of you have never seen the article. I was talking to somebody a little while ago. We made the front page of the Wall Street Journal, both west and east. Full page, right down the middle. It was a great article, right, Stentz? Okay, I have to thank the Daily Mining Gazette because we had a golf tournament. John, you must have played in that golf tournament, I'm sure. The kids all played it. It's still going on. It was called the Kentuckian Open. And I wrote articles every week for the Gazette, and most of them made the AP line. So anytime I went to the Gazette, they put any garbage I ever gave them. And lots of it was BS, and that's when I used Harvey J, because all of the stuff I was putting out was so crazy so full of BS that I was afraid somebody was going to sue me. So whenever anybody asked me or called me, I'd say, Harvey J. said this. So, and Kaka didn't finish his shift. So, you got that, right? Sumalina did that. Okay. So I also have to thank the Mining Gazette and Chamber of Commerce and John Davis. I'll tell you, without John, that's when he got into it really heavy, because he played before, but he had the vet.
Really heavy.
It's a good thing that you didn't have that in those days, John. But he had the Vets Club. And let me tell you, without the Vets Club and the library bar and John, it wouldn't have worked. John was really behind it. I was affiliated with the schools, and let me tell you, first year, Steady Ed wasn't really behind him. Goldie was a little more cooperative. He became more cooperative. But the first year, they sent me reject Frisbees. They were white, they were molded wrong, they were cracked. The next year, I got these Frisbees. I brought 2 of them today, and Stencil grabbed one right away because this has straight spell wrong. And I've given it to my friend here because I guess they're collector's items now. Those 200 or 300 I had at the harbor, I guess aren't worth much. But anyway.
I'll be looking for money today.
The Calumet Elks Clubs had the concession for the booze at the 68 and 69 tournaments. They still are very thankful. The Kakukian Cup is now at Calumet, and it's their major cup because I think I paid like $300 back in '68 for it. It's a pretty good cup. But anyway, new things. I got to cut this short, Jake. You timing me? Okay. We made the first professional Frisbee flag. And you'll see that on this short tape. Harvey J. Cuckuck flyover, Frisbee drops, real Frisbees. George Gipp Memorial Pagoda. I got to tell you a quick story about that one. The George Gipp Memorial Pagoda was really Goldie's idea, wasn't it, Goldie? I think you named that sucker. I told him about it, and he says, you know, this is a promotion. We got one, folks. Anyway, he did that. The golf tournament went to Kakukian Reports. I've got copies of all that stuff. Special gold Frisbees. How many have those? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, the mini ones, yeah. We had a party. Tom Ellis, who's a professor, retired from Michigan Tech. I had nothing but PhDs on the ball yard committee, all from Michigan Tech. And we had a party after one of the Frisbee tournaments. You know, Frisbee tournaments, that's why I see people sleeping out here, and I say, I know why, I understand. We got those mini Frisbees over to Tom's place, and any of you know what a Delaware Shorty is? A Delaware Shorty. Well, a Delaware Shorty is those long, tall spears, you know? Looks like forts. And we used to call those Delaware Shorties back when I was playing Frisbees. And we started throwing around those gold Frisbees, and I think we broke everything in the living room. But we had a hell of a night. It was fun. That was after the '68 tournament. Charles Corral. I called Charles Corral at one time. I talked to him. Quite a guy. He was willing to come up the following year to the Frisbee tournament. That would have been the '70s. But he schedules 1 year in advance. So that fell apart. The herring chokers, I mentioned that before. In '68, Sully Copey, who's a commercial fisherman out of Copper Harbor. I see somebody nodding his head over here. Sully Copey came from Copper Harbor in his fishing boat with a big sign saying, herring chokers. I think they said foul 5, or maybe it was something to do with fish. I don't remember. But that's the first group that came by boat to Eagle Harbor. Let me see. Okay, 2 more things. One of the things that I really remember, and having seen all you folks and how you have a good time, was after the '69 Frisbee tournament, Steady Ed, Goldie, Stencil, and a number of others were sitting at M26 where they rented a cottage. And we decided to close M26 down. So we put cars across M26. Ed broke out a bottle of Cavassier. Goldie, his job was to turn the lights on. This is when the Moonlighter first came up. We had the first ones up there. He had to charge the Moonlighters as Steady Ed and I threw Frisbees back and forth and drank Cavassier. And in all the fun I had, and I had a great time with Frisbee. I'm 32 years out of it. It's nice to see you guys enjoying what I enjoyed. And I just love the time I spent with Frisbee. You enjoy your time.
And I will give you just a little piece of information, and it's in conjunction with what Jim just said. That night with the Moonlighter Frisbees, it was the '68 tournament. It was my first year here. We were playing and drinking that night. And I remember turning to one of the Healy brothers. It may have been Jake, it may have been Bruce, I'm not sure. And I said, you know what? All this wonderful feeling and all this camaraderie, of course I can embellish it now. I just said, this is pretty good. But what I really said was, there's a book here, you know, I think it would be a fun book to write about what Frisbee's all about. And as you know, I sort of went ahead and did that. I just want to give you a couple of things. I'm terribly pleased to be here tonight with you. My Frisbee career began in 1960 when I started playing, and it was in 1966, 67, I'm a little hazy, that I joined the IFA. Actually, I drove to the IFA in Los Angeles. I happened to be there inside all the way. And I knocked on the door, and the man said, come in. And I did, and he said, why are you here? And he was surrounded by Frisbees. It wasn't Ed Hedrick. It was a man named Richard Worden, who was their first manager. I said, I'm here to join the IFA in person. And he stopped and he said, well, for that, we'll waive the 50-cent membership. Well, he told me about the tournament. It must have been '67. He told me about Ed Hedrick. He told me about the Healys and what was going on up here. But I had no intent. And then I wrote to Boots. No, yes, I wrote to Boots. And I said I would very much like to come. I was in the Navy at the time. I'd been drafted into the Navy. And I was stationed in North Carolina with the Marines as a Navy psychiatrist. And Boots said, well, I really, you know, I can't deal with you. You'll have to talk to Harvey J. Cucktuck. So he gave me Harvey J.'s post office box, and I wrote a letter to Mr. Cucktuck. I would very much like to come to your tournament. I'm fresh in the Navy, but I'm living in California. And he didn't answer. So, you know, I figured, well, perhaps I should try again. So I wrote another letter to Mr. Cucktuck. And again, he didn't answer. So I wrote a letter to Mr. Healy again. And Boots said, you know, it may be that Harvey J. is gone. He's off and out on expeditions, tracking down arcane, aardvarks, and the like. I said, in that respect, I'll deal with it. Now, where you say you're from? I said, North Carolina at present. Well, that's okay. We do not have any qualifying tournaments in North Carolina. You can come on your own. Long story short, I came in on the plane. I moved from Green Bay, and I saw these four guys in the back of the plane. It was Steve Sewell, Dave Shelton, Ken Hedrick, Ed's oldest son, and Ed Hedrick. And I walked down the aisle and I said, do any of you guys know anything about a Frisbee tournament up here? And that was my beginning with Ed Hedrick. And that was a friendship that lasted until he died almost 2 years ago. And it's too bad he's not here on the speakers tonight, because Ed was so real and so, maybe he wasn't real, I don't know. I'll tell you one little story about Ed, and I don't want to overshoot my time. But he was lying in his home in just south of Santa Cruz, and I had a chance to go up with some friends to see him. he had a stroke, and he wasn't speaking, and he was probably not even conscious. And I sat by him, and I held his hand, and I said, Ed, I want you to know that wherever Frisbees fly, and this is one of those places, the name of Ed Hedrick will always be heard.
Amen.
He winked at me. So, if Ed were here, and I'll try to speak for him, the spirit of Frisbee began in the cocker country. It began here. Ed brought the Frisbees. He brought those rascal California players, one from North Carolina, because they invited him to play that year. But he discovered, or Whammo, because Whammo originally only thought that Frisbee was just kind of like a toy, and Ed saw it as a sport. He discovered that there was a sport. It was here. And you folks enthralled him and instilled in him the belief that we should make this not just a fun thing, we should make this a sport for the ages. So you created that with him. Thank you.
Harvey J. Chuck. He's an elusive character. He's been driving the submarine off the coast of Eagle Harbor, spotted in various places. But last we heard, he was living with Dr. Stancil Johnson. Johnson's been getting mail from him, for him, and responding to it. Harvey J. Kachuk has been getting credit cards and who knows what all. That's the story of Harvey J.
I know you do.
I'll just do a couple that are a little more personal. I thought earlier we were talking about Morrison. I believe it was the 25th anniversary of this thing. We had a kind of a reunion here. Is it Ted Morrison? Fred Morrison. Attended that. And we were in a situation not unlike this, each taking a little turn at speaking, and people were talking about their days in the past of throwing Frisbees at one another and the injuries they'd sustained and so on. And when it became Fred's turn, he says, well, I'm not so much into playing Frisbee, I'm more into the royalties. The other one is about my friend Stancil, who showed up at the library one evening, the night before the tournament, in full dress black uniform of the Navy. And I recall we over and by it to some great degree. And at closing time, he said, John, you've either got to throw me out of here or find me a place to stay. I said, well, you're more than welcome to stay at the house. Come on up. And I put him up on our living room couch. My next awareness was a 6-year-old boy running up the stairs screaming, Mommy, Mommy, there's a policeman sleeping on the couch. I think you've heard what the spirit of this thing is supposed to be from Jim and John. The way it got started, and my introduction to Frisbee was in reading some of these fantastic articles that used to appear in the Gazette about rules meeting down in the deep levels of the mines, things like that. And it's very encouraging to see this number of people and to see the number of people that were out at the tournament today. And maybe we can rekindle that spirit and continue to have a good time. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to Dave Bradshaw for putting this all together. I know it was One thanks to Guido for running the tournament. You're in there somewhere. It's fun when it's all over, but getting to it is a bitch.
That's right. Go down.
Bringing in
Look at
Julius.
how pretty that stroke you
Let's you.
Julie. For a award, right, that case. This is the real Julius C. Nakazel Cup. Shake. Who's got the cup ready? Who's got a penny in it? The coveted Julius Nakazel Cup. Why? All right.
You say all the trophies out of Canada or something?
Distinguished company, you've heard an awful lot about the history of Frisbee, particularly Gus. I'd like to talk about you just a second, and a few
Guts. Because without you, there wouldn't be anything for us to talk about. What's going to happen in the future to Guts? I saw something today that was so remarkable. I saw the sons of former excellent Guts players performing at a very high level. I saw the sons of people from New Mexico and Chicago and the Upper Peninsula and Ohio performing at a very high level, enjoying the game, and are infected with it now. And I think and also I want to say something about the friends and wives and moms and sisters and everybody else that comes to help support this operation. So, where do we go from here? It's not up to us. We're has-beens. We're what used to be, and that's not all that interesting for all that long a time. It's interesting to you right now and here. Well, what we're really interested in, what next year, and the year after, what about 10 years from now? Will there be an IFT? Will there be Guts Frisbee played at a high level? I want you to know that I've seen a lot of IFTs, and I've participated in quite a number of them. The quality, evenness of the quality across this tournament today was the highest I have ever seen. There were no schlock teams here today. There were solid, good players who worked together and played extremely well.
Feel bad.
We weren't schlock. We weren't schlock.
That's right. We were the worst of the best. Yeah.
Always one word.
Here, which I think is really pure competition, really beautiful competition. And I want to pay tribute especially to the fact that it has taken place here in this far-off corner of the world, you know, unreality and all that kind of stuff. I really don't think it could have taken place anyplace else. And I thought about, you know, how do you, out of all the wonderful competition this guy is just talking about that we have seen today, and I agree, this is just a wonderful, wonderful field of teams. I have enjoyed every game that I have been in today, and I just feel so privileged and lucky to play with you guys. I mean, this is just wonderful, wonderful sport. So I thought about, you know, how can I get something across? And I thought of one person going back 30 years to the 1972 tournament that I kind of want to memorialize a little bit. And I thought of another person today. And I just kind of ran in, I saw the way this guy played. And so I'm going to call this little thing the two Johnnies. The first Johnny is Johnny Hodges, who played meant a great deal to me, because when I came up in '67 with a Berkeley team and we kind of mowed everybody down, there was no competition, and me and Shelton felt, well, you know, when's it going to, will it out, we'll come back next year maybe, you know, whammo, blah, blah, blah. Nothing much going on. Then Berkeley gets pretty serious about playing the game of Frisbee. I didn't come up for another 4 or 5 years, being, you know, deeply involved in all the things that people were doing at Berkeley in those days. And, but I made it up in 1972. I had a job in Chicago, and the Berkeley team were come up, and they were really good. They had 2 good teams. I was only on the B team for the Berkeley team, and the A team was a monster team. I mean, they were amazing. And it turned out that out of the blue, like for the first time ever, and all, you know, all this tournament was going on, the Hueys doing their wonderful things, there was a bunch of vacationers and people coming up for the most part, and all of a sudden, this local team had come up, out of the blood and soil and the hard work and the copper and the hard, you know, the metals and the stuff around here. And here was this guy, Johnny Hodges, sitting, who was a hockey goalie from what I understood, standing in the middle, sitting in the middle of the field, and that guy wanted every disc, no matter who was throwing it, no matter how hard, and he was a hockey goalie, and I had nothing but admiration for just the way he just grabbed everything that came at him. There's 1 or 2 guys out here today that have some of that spirit in them, and when you make those grabs, I call them a Johnny Hodges type of a grab. So I think of him, and then the other darn thing that happened today is out of the blue, the old Highland Avenue Aces, you know, the old years. Where have the Aces been? And then the other comes the other Johnny, And this Johnny is John Connolly, and that guy, he's been swinging golf clubs, and he hasn't been playing frisbee, and he almost didn't come here, and now that he's here, he's thinking, I don't know, I think I could be someplace else. But I saw, I saw John Connolly just laying it down, and his shot is just as good, it's dropping low, and it's just as hard to catch as it was before. And so I call this, I want to raise my glass to the two Johnnies. Hodges, I understand
Johnny,
you're here
you're still a
today.
leaker.
Mrs. Hodges, are you here? I got this for you. I got 10 or 12 copies of an article that I wrote for the Chicago Reader that talks about that tournament, and I didn't know your husband's name in it, but just let me shake your hand. And I know we've lost John. I think everybody here knows that we lost him a couple years ago, just as the man was about to make a comeback, and I hear he was throwing harder than ever. Okay, good to see you. Thank you, God bless you. And can I thank? They call this neck of the woods a depressed area. This depressed area has given me some of the happiest moments of my life, and I thank you all for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm the luckiest SOB that's ever created to have these people as my friends, as well as many of you out there. And I will tell you that this area has been a pleasure to me. I am the husband of a former IFT queen, and I'm just thrilled to be here. And yesterday I worked a full day in Los Angeles. I caught a red eye, flew into Chicago, flew from Chicago to Green Bay, and drove from Green Bay up here. So that'll give you an idea of how much I care about this.
Hi, Goldie.
Talk all night like everybody else, but there's just two. The first one is, the first time we at WAMO found out about the IFT, we didn't know what the hell to do. So we hired a photographer to come up here, and naturally Bojo and all the other people took him out and got him totally drunk, and he didn't know what the hell he was doing. And took pictures, he had some great pictures. Unfortunately, the captions had nothing to do with reality. I know that Jake was Clyde's sibling, and I don't know who the hell anybody else was. But at any rate, that was our first association. My first direct association with this tournament was in, I guess it was 1970, when these four kids came up from Chicago called the Highland Avenue Aces. Unfortunately, they didn't realize you needed 5 people for a Guts Frisbee team, so they were forced to draft me to be a member of their team. And I am not a good Guts Frisbee player, but we did end up in second place, and I do have the distinction. I don't know if any of you remember a guy named Bob May, but he was one of the most powerful Frisbee players that ever played, and I did make a catch on Bob May.
No.
One guy punked out on us.
Me.
Wow.
No.
It's a great honor for Dave to ask me to be up here with these guys. Unbelievable. I'm not in their league, and I'll never be in their league, but that's probably why, you know. I have reached that 60 barrier, so. But I need for you people to understand how important it was for Jake Healy and Jim Baggio and the Healy brothers to put together this IFT. What it has meant. It has meant everything. Because Ed Hedrick and Whammo wouldn't have anything going. It was these guys that inspired Ed Hedrick and Whammo to say, hey, we can do something with this Frisbee. Right? I talked to Dick Gillespie at Whammo. They were ready to can the thing. They were ready to say, hey, this is going nowhere. Matter of fact, they had Fred Morrison had asked Whammo, he says, look, the sales were so slow, he asked Whammo, he says, look, I'll tell you what, I'll let you out of your contract to pay me a royalty if you give me $25,000. And Whammo, $25,000? Forget it, you know. Said, no way. Well, these guys got into the action. They created the sport of frisbee. And Whammo paid out over millions of dollars in royalties to Fred Morrison, where they could have got out for $25,000. So, these guys' fault. They cost Whammo a lot of money.
He's in our league, lot of BS.
This is the truth. I'm out trying to find the truth. It was Stancil Johnson, Steve Trauger, and Victor Malafrani are doing some excellent research and trying to find out all the facts, trying to get it all together. They've been sending me all the stuff. I've been digesting it, learning it, and trying to work it. I'm trying to write a book on the early history of disc golf. And I realized the early history of disc golf is totally and absolutely dependent on the IFT and the Healy brothers. If it wasn't for them, there wouldn't be any frisbees around to play disc golf with. So, it's all here. These guys started. These guys were the original super frisbee people. And Victor's research showed that all over the world, and at any given time, if there's a disc-shaped object, they're going to pick it up, people pick it up and fling it around. And then have fun with it, and then put it down and go on. These guys had so much fun, they didn't put it down. They kept going, they kept going. They created the whole foundation. Now there's tens of thousands of disc golfers out there that owe their happiness and fun to these guys. And that's not BS. That's the truth. There's thousands and thousands of ultimate players. There's about 100 freestylers out there. And and of course all the thousands of guts players, although they're not here now, and they're sort of waiting for the resurgence that Dave Bradshaw and Dennis and all you guys are putting together here. So it's coming back, and I just want you to appreciate what these guys have done. They really have done.
If any of you have had a chance to talk to us, I'm sure that you realize how humble and honored we are to have been able to carry Julie for a year. I got on the plane from Minneapolis to Hancock, and a guy recognized my hat. He said, "You're a guts player?" And I said, "Yeah." "Where are you from?" "I'm from New Mexico." "I'm Stancil Johnson." And my jaw dropped because our guys learned to play frisbee from Stancil's book. We didn't even know there were other guts players. So when we heard that there was a tournament in Chicago, we thought we were the best in the world, and we quickly learned that we weren't. But what I'd like to say is that without you, we would be missing something from our lives. And I'd like you to know that it means as much to us as it does to you, and we're truly honored to be here tonight on such a historic occasion. Thank you. Actually, I have one more thing to say. John Dexter here orchestrated the kind of restoration of putting all the plaques on.
Yeah.
Frank Brady had a metal sculpture go inside there and kind of structuralize. Is that a word? has more structural stability than it did before. And I think they put another penny in there, so it's worth twice as much.
Ramon says it's unsafe to pour beer in the trophy. Who's got a plastic cup? Put a glass one in there. Gentlemen, this is your time. Nobody's going to be a taker here, huh? They're going to pick it up.
Because it leaks. Dave, you don't touch the cup before you win it, baby. I think so too. You got to win it before you can pick it. How about a picture? Anybody who's ever won the cup, you guys go up there so we can get a picture. Anybody who's ever drunk from the cup.